So of course I had to take notes, and I have the good fortune of a lavalier mic, so I'm going to be a little bit mobile. If the ADD amongst you freak out about that, sorry but not sorry. It's the way I have to cope with talking. So you gave me my talking points to start with. Food, I can absolutely guarantee it's going to be great food because Sarah Mixter, who's running everything in the back of the room, she made sure that if you want good reviews post-event, you have to make sure that the food and booze is flowing and good. So, check. Fun, here's what I'm going to say about fun. That's on y'all. Okay? I mean, we're going to do what we can. We've set the stage and the table, so to speak, but you're all going to have to take some responsibility and at least meet us halfway. Okay? Friendship, yeah, come on. I've known Jerry since before my time at NC Idea. You know, and a fun fact, he was talking about like going to all these summits all the time, and it's true, likewise, and we would bump into each other at some of these summits. I'm thinking NACI in particular, where we would be, it was one year in particular, we were somewhere west, so time difference, right? And Jerry and I were always the first people on Eastern Standard Time waiting for the coffee shop to open. So that's where we would have like an impromptu hour-long conversation in the morning because, you know, come on, it's time to get going and make the donuts. And faith. Thank you for that statement. Faith is important, right? These are weird and trying times. And I think really having faith, having optimism right now is an act of courage. Because there's so much that could help keep you down and keep that down. So thank you for bringing up and making that point. So why are we here? We are here to kick off officially Global Entrepreneurship Week in the state of North Carolina. We are the organizing sponsor for GEW, and this is the kickoff event. Global Entrepreneurship Week started many years ago, and it's 1 week out of the year where thousands of events are happening all over the world. I think it's some crazy number, like 80 countries around the world will have upwards of 30 to 40,000 events this week. And so we're very excited to be part of that and to bring together this statewide coalition of ecosystem partners, friends, practitioners, supporters, entrepreneurs themselves, so that we can shine a light on this thing of ours, as I like to call it, and we can elevate and celebrate this important work. Now, we can't do this important work without some important people. And by that, of course, I mean our sponsors. No disrespect to this wonderful venue or any other one that you attend, but these ain't cheap to put on, right? And there are many in this room that do events, so you really know what I'm talking about. And, you know, it's all well and fine for us to underwrite, you know, the expense of doing such a thing. But as my team will tell you, I look at every dollar we spend in units of grants that we could make. So the total bill for this would be somewhere order of magnitude of around 4 seed grants or 20 to 25 micro grants. And so anything or anyone that comes in and helps subsidize so that we can preserve that vital budget for putting it in the hands of the hometown heroes starting and growing is very much appreciated. And in particular, I want to call out 2 of them. That big red box belongs to a little bank most of you know, Wells Fargo. Wells really stepped up in a big way this year and is helping us think, and we're helping them think about a way that we can really work deeper and more meaningful, in particular in our rural communities. So I want to thank, you know, Wells for that support. And I also want to thank the Research Triangle Foundation. The Research Triangle Foundation is actually supporting us across our mission with significant funding, a 7-figure commitment, where they have funded some ecosystem grants that several of you in the room have been the beneficiaries of, as well as work and grants made by the Black Entrepreneurship Council in furtherance of their equity goals. So thank you. I don't know, is Linda in the room? There she is, Linda Hall, one of my directors, one of my bosses. Linda, I will always be thankful for our affiliation and friendship. So Thanks for that, and thank you for allowing me to segue into the next group of people that I need to thank and acknowledge. See how I did that? Seamless. And that's my board, my awesome board. You know, I'm an old guy now, so I've worked in a lot of places and I've had boards to report to. And, you know, I serve on boards, as many of you do. And at the risk of stating something that's obvious, boards, I think, are one of the most underappreciated and misunderstood X factors in the life of a nonprofit. A board can make an incredible difference for good and for bad. And I have been blessed by the best board I've ever had the privilege to serve. This group of people is only matched by the staff in commitment to value and mission of what we do. And most importantly, they allow the team to constantly imagine on what can be, right? We serve entrepreneurs, right? And which means we have to eat our own dog food. We have to take risks, right? But you can only do that, you only feel empowered to do that if you have a board that encourages that. If you have to be fearful that, like, oh, we tried, we had a theory, we did an experiment, it didn't work, I don't want to go to the next board meeting and explain that, right? That's going to hold you back. Instead, we have a board that says, challenge your thinking, challenge, what you want to accomplish, and then tell us how it worked out. And that's great, because if you take a board like that and you match it with a team like this, you can accomplish great things. Frankly, what you can accomplish is manifest in this room. So, a genuine shout out to an incredible team. Please get a chance to meet them all. They're going to be throughout, the next 3 days together. You're going to see them everywhere. And then in particular, I already gave her a shout out for the food that's going to be exceptional, but I do want to call out Sarah because this is her baby. Thank you. Not only does she manage the summit every year, she also oversees our most prolific grant program, which is Engage, by volume of grants being made. So chances are everybody in this room, either through an Engage grant or the summit, has had an email from Sarah at one time or another. So thank you, Sarah, and the rest of the team. They're just incredible. So let's do the official mission. What do we do? There's the official language on the site. What I like to paraphrase is basically we exist to help people realize the maximum entrepreneurial potential that we all have. It's innate in all of us. What's not necessarily in all of us is access, networks, resources, mentoring, educational programs, right? And that's why a lot of our work is driven by addressing those deficiencies in the marketplace. But at the end of the day, we're trying to help people realize their full entrepreneurial potential, because, ladies and gentlemen, that's the greatest natural resource we have on this planet. Full stop. So how do we do that? Well, we do it through a strategic combination or a strategic portfolio of grants and programs. For the purposes of explaining it to people, I like to use a metaphor of, we have a B2C strategy and a B2B strategy. And for those of you who don't know what those acronyms mean, B2C is business to consumer, right? And who is our consumer? Who do we see as the client, the ultimate client? The ultimate client for us are the entrepreneurs, the founders, our hometown heroes that are bravely going forward, daring to start something, and in the process creating jobs and economic impact that allows our communities to thrive. It's the entrepreneurs, it's the Main Streeters, it's the people off the Industrial Parkway. They're the ones that fund the tax base for the nice park that you like to go to, for the strong public schools that you want. They're the ones that create the economic activity that says to the entrepreneur restaurateur, yeah, I'm going to take a chance and open up a cool spot over here, right? So that's who we serve, and we have programs specifically for them. The micro grant program, well, let me start with the seed grant program. The seed grant program is a $50,000 non-dilutive grant program that we were founded on. The organization went through the legal structure like '05 and really started out of the gate around '06. And so this is a competitive grant process that we do twice a year in the spring and the fall, where founders from across the state will apply for one of these $50,000 grants. And I said, it's a grant, it's free money, non-dilutive. It's not debt, it's not a loan, it's not equity. And as you heard in my long, and apologies, boring bio, I have been doing this work in a few places for a few years, and I don't know of an organization that gives away more money than NC IDEA, full stop. Sure. The microgrant program was, one of those entrepreneurial risks that we took because, since the beginning, or at least for the last almost 8 years now, equity has become a committed priority of the foundation where we had to say, how can we fund more underserved groups, specifically, founders that are BIPOC, female, and rural. And the numbers just were struggling in that seed grant. It just seemed that, white men from major metro areas just were more competitive. It is a competition at the end of the day. And we weren't seeing the pipeline of applicants that really hit our ambition to diversify. So we said, well, what if we went earlier stage, more in the idea stage? Would that help us uncover more people, in some of these historically underserved categories that we want to see have a fair fight? Like, let's just level the playing field. So we took that chance with micro, and I've got to thank our board who said, sure, let's see what happens. That's embodying the entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on what's resulted from that. So those two programs together, B2C. B2B, a lot of you are in that B2B in this room, and that's what we do for ecosystem, or we do with, I should say, ecosystem partners around the state. That's us working with you through our Engage and Ecosystem Grant Program to fund capacity. And I'll just make an analogy here. What micro is to seed, Engage is to ecosystem. So ecosystem grants are typically, high 5 to low 6-figure grants. They're usually 1 to 2 years in term, where we're collaborating with you to do something specific for your region or for the constituents that you serve. And then the Engage grant is a way for us, as one of my former board members said, this is our walking around money. And this is how we find new friends and fund really worthwhile projects that are smaller scale, but of high potential, high impact. And I can say with confidence that a lot of our ecosystem grant partners now started as an Engage grant partner, as it should. And the same is holding out between our micro and seed grants. Now, I skipped over mindset. Some of you are probably the ADD amongst you, or OCD, I think is the better way to say it. They're saying, man, he went right over mindset. Because mindset straddles both B2B and B2C. That is our top of the funnel. That is a learning program built upon the framework of a program. One of the last things I did before leaving the Kauffman Foundation was I launched a program called the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. Out of curiosity, how many people are familiar with Ice House? So I think I could just take 90 seconds back from my talk. So you understand the value of this. What we're trying to teach with this program is not a business skill. An entrepreneurial mindset, hear me when I say this, please. It's not a business skill, it's a life skill. It is an absolute life skill. And it will benefit you regardless of your chosen path. Right? And that's why we are seeing it. You are going to be in for a treat tomorrow over lunch. You're going to be hearing about a very unique application for it. I got chills thinking about it because I happen to know what's about to go down, and it's very, very cool. It's been, in fact, taught on 5 continents. It's been translated into multiple languages. It's been in postdoc fellowship programs. It's been taught at law school. It's been taught in middle school. It's been taught with partnerships with workforce development boards, right, for displaced workers in our rural communities. It's anywhere an entrepreneurial life skill would be of benefit. That's why it exists. And we have an ambition to get 100,000 people through this program, and with your help, we're going to achieve that. And if we do that in the state of North Carolina, I promise you it will pay incredible dividends down the road. So, got the housekeeping of who we are, what we do out of the way. Let's talk about what we're going to do over the next couple of days. You know, I like to call this the 3 days of awesomeness: new friends, new ideas equal new opportunities. And that's really what I'm hopeful here. Many of you are here with one or more other colleagues. I'm going to give you a piece of advice. You know those people. You don't need to hang with them, okay? I've already made new friends. I know that other people, this gentleman right here, how many cards do you already have on your table? 7. Okay, so there's the bar. You know, tonight we're going to have an incredible reception right out those doors. You'll have an awesome opportunity to mix and mingle, meet some of our ecosystem partners. The research tables out there are manned exclusively. We curated that on purpose and intentionally. And then tomorrow, you're kind of on your own. So maybe plant some seeds tonight so that you have something to do on that fun category for tomorrow night. So what do we have? Well, first of all, we're going to hear from some incredible people, a lot smarter than myself. Today, the theme is generally going to be around the need sometimes to fight for this work, right? There's a lot going on. I alluded to this earlier. I will confess, we stole the moniker Fearless from the Fearless Fund legal battle that's going on right now that some of y'all may be very well aware of. There are forces in the world trying to take us back to a time where equity and equal access were not a priority, where leveling the playing field was actually a foreign concept. And for some of the people, I should say for all the people that you're going to hear from just this afternoon, that's not an acceptable answer. You know, we have talked, and others like us have talked, and we're preparing for the fight. We don't depend on hope as a strategy, so we're going to be brave and fearless and stand for our values and do what we're going to do, and you're going to hear from these folks that are doing that at their level. By the way, all the bios of all the speakers are in your programs. There's a QR code you can hit that will give you more information, but that's what we're going to do this afternoon. We're going to start tomorrow morning with the senior senator from North Carolina, Thom. I'm going to beg your patience. It's going to be exercise in technology. He's zooming in. Apparently, there's some stuff going on in D.C. this week. I have no idea what. So it was required and expedient that we do that via Zoom. So I'm going to be awkwardly sitting somewhere up here staring at a camera I'm yet to be told. But you all will be able to get a much better view from those screens when we chat. Our friends at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, that kind of morning slot is going to be dedicated to technology-based economic development. There's a lot of great innovation happening in this state. You know, some of our partners, First Flight Venture Center, Krista Covey, who's also one of my board members. By the way, there's one of my former board members, Peyton Anderson. He snuck in over on that wall. He was a tremendous resource for the 6 years he served. So, Peyton, thank you for coming. By the way, if you want to know a real opinion, buy him a beverage this evening and ask. He'll let you know. Day 2 is also going to have a lot of featured sessions and breakout sessions. One of the things we hear every year for the summit is a request for more of this, more of the networking, the workshops, the how-tos. So y'all got what you asked for. I don't know if 3 days is going to be the thing everybody wanted, so we're going to think about that a little longer, but boy, do we have it. And again, some of the breakout sessions tomorrow are B2B, B2C. So the top 2 are for ecosystem partner folks, and the bottom 2 are for the entrepreneurs in the room seeking funding. And then we're going to bring it home on day 3 with what everybody wants. Where's the money? What's happening with the capital stack, right? Winter is coming. That's what we've been hearing for a couple of years now, right? Yet the curious thing is a lot of the companies we have funded are having record funding right now. What does that mean? I don't know. But our good friend, Tim McLaughlin, who's a managing partner at Co-Founders Capital, and frankly, he was a fellow for us way before he was some big financier. But in all seriousness, a good friend of the foundation, he's going to be leading a no-holds-barred conversation. And I know there's one troublemaker in the room that was already provoking a fight on LinkedIn before we even got started. I'm not going to say who he is, Jim Roberts, but we're going to talk about it. And we're also going to hear today, tomorrow, and Wednesday from the entrepreneurs that are actually getting it done, right? So that's a big part of what we try to do with this summer is inject candor and honesty and real talk that hopefully is constructive. And more to the point, keeps the dialogue going when you get home into your communities. So I mentioned earlier, that equity is kind of at the heart of what we do. When I left the Kauffman Foundation and landed here, it wasn't for lack of other options. And I don't mean to be arrogant when I say that. It was because, I've gotten to a point in my career, when you have, how does that go? When you have less tomorrows than you have of yesterdays, however you say in a quaint way that you're old, you start thinking about your legacy and what you want to do. And one of the things that really had me excited about taking over, from the founder of the organization, Dave Rizzo, which were big shoes to fill, was the notion that the board that hired me at the time said, you have a kind of a white page here. And one of the priorities I said was, that equity's got to be at the forefront. I had seen enough of the world, especially in the ecosystem space, to know what everybody in this room knows, is that there's great, uneven, great disparities in this space. And I wanted to do something to change that. So we had to put equity, firmly at the base level of everything we do. And then we have to kind of think about, okay, we have good intention, that doesn't necessarily make us qualified, right? And we have to be honest. When I say we, I mean people in the philanthropic space, people in the nonprofit space that do economic development. We have to be honest about this. I actually realized this real time in a room not unlike this one when I was at Kauffman, and we were launching this new app. And we had started this thing called 1 Million Cups. And in the early days of 1 Million Cups, we would get 200 people in the room on a Wednesday morning. So it became a great test bed, right? So I stood in front of everybody and said, hey, we're thinking about rolling out this app. We might need some beta users, to come and test that. And we want to interact on that. Show of hands, anybody interested in doing that? And all the hands went up, and I was like, oh, John, I know you. You have a hard time parking your car. And Jane, you're awesome, but you show up at everything and you feel obligated to speak at everything. It came to me this understanding that there are many well-intended people, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're always qualified to do that kind of thing, right? So we have to understand it, and that means in ourselves too. So it is that when we said that funding in particular, or advancing Black entrepreneurship in the state was going to be a priority for us, we couldn't rely on just ourselves to do it. We had to look externally, and we had to say, how do we overcome our own, inadequacies of our lived experience to inform this work? So we formed the North Carolina Black Entrepreneurship Council. And you see these folks on here, and some are in this room. If you want to understand how you can tackle a really big thing, please talk to somebody from the BEC, because they are helping us do that. So now the question is it working? So we looked at the data, and we chunked it up into 2 blocks, like the first 10-ish years of the organization and about the last 8. And in the first 10 years of the organization, you see here that grant distribution to the underserved population that I've talked about, BIPOC, female, rural, was 27%. Now, I don't want to vilify the past, right? There's historical context to what the focus was of the organization, because it was a different time, at the risk of stating the obvious. It was a different time in 2006, and it was created really to accelerate high tech in the triangle primarily, right? And let's be honest, high tech triangles, probably two white dudes at Duke. It is, right? And it is what it is. You know, we're not, like I said, we're not going to go change it, but by focusing on programs like micro grant, you know, focusing with a group like the BEC, things started to change. Okay? 81% now. Wow, I already thought that was going to get applause. That wasn't thirsty at all. A point here I need to make, very, very important. We got to this not by precluding any group. We did not say two white dudes from Duke need not apply. What we did is we invested in a lot of you all to increase your capacity to help the people you serve be more competitive. That was a significant investment in leveling the playing field so that the two white guys from Duke now have a hell of a lot more competition. And at the end of the day, if the field is level, then we let them compete and the winners win. But we've got to let people onto the field. So it wasn't just demographics, it was also geographics, right? I already mentioned we were started for the triangle, so you might imagine that a lot of the grant distribution was in the triangle. As it turns out, what is that, 88% went to the triangle. I know we quaintly said non-triangle for that 12%. That really should just say Charlotte. We'd screw up and make a grant to somebody in Charlotte every once in a while. And that was that, right? Again, nothing wrong with that. This is still the bulk of where the GDP in the state. There's population density here. I want to be super clear on this, I am not vilifying anything affiliated with the triangle. You know, the state is lucky to have the concentration of business activity and entrepreneurial activity that's happening here. All I'm saying is, let's help everybody else get up to that level, right? So we made it a priority, and this is how it's looking, right? Not bad. So I'm going to go very quickly down memory lane. You've been seeing, or you will see over the next 3 days, these slides that are going to come scrolling through about companies we have funded and where they are today and what they've done, whether being acquired or raising a significant amount of money. I've just picked a handful here to make the point of how we've been building this entrepreneurial future of ours over the last 18 years. Going way back, pulling one from the files, Transloc. There's probably some folks in this room that have the Transloc app on their phone, right? They were one of the original creators of an application to do real-time location-based tracking of metro assets, buses, think tracking buses and things like that. I think the idea was started in 2004, and by about 2006, they were either in our first or second cohort to receive a seed grant. You know, and then they had an overnight success that was only 12 years later, you know, as is the joke. And in all seriousness, 12 years, you know, working, making it happen. They got to the point where they are acquired by this little company called Ford Motor Corporation. It's a little company in Detroit, Michigan. And, you know, that was a great thing. When that happened, everybody gets excited. You know, I was already here for a couple of years at the time that the acquisition was announced. And, you know, when there is an exit or an acquisition, it's like caffeine for the ecosystem. It's a jolt, right? Because so many of us, that's the goal. You know, we're working towards that life-changing, wealth-creating event that puts those founders and the team on a different trajectory and really has great impact on the community. I think one of the coolest things about the Transloc story that's lesser known is that Ford recognized the culture and the kind of commitment to innovation that they let Transloc stay in Durham. You know, that's very uncommon, right? The more common practice is, you know, I buy you, you're going to come here now. But they didn't, and they are still to this day. So that DNA of that work ethic, that journey has stayed in the ecosystem. It's from a similar time, just a few years later. Automated Insights was started by a gentleman named Robbie Allen. He was working for this little tech company you might have heard of called Cisco at the time. I remember when he first told me this story, I was like, wait a minute, you were being paid that big salary by Cisco and you still were allowed to tinker? And he's like, yeah. So kudos to Cisco, if anybody in the room is from them. But yeah, he started around 2007 with the idea. 2 years later, seeing the trend here? You got to tinker at it for a couple years. But he wins a seed grant, and his overnight success came, I think, in 6 years. So about a half dozen years later, when it was acquired. The interesting thing about Robbie, and the common thing about his story is, once he had that exit, he did what a lot of founders that exit do. Did it again, right? Started a couple more companies. And then more recently, he joined another serial entrepreneur of the region, Scott Wingo, some of you may be familiar with that, and started the Triangle Tweener Fund, which is funding very early stage, you know, companies in the Triangle. And they started early last year, so they don't even have their 2-year anniversary yet, and they've already done 68 deals with 58 companies deploying over $3.5 million. And I think, somebody can correct me if you're a funder in the room, I think they are now the number one, by deal volume, the number one equity investor in the state of North Carolina, right? That's the ecosystem effect, right? That's what we want. A little more recent, Lonewell. You know, Lonewell are friends of the foundation. They've been very successful at what they've done. They started in before 2017. And, you know, I say there's product of the ecosystem. Lonewell, you'd almost have to call a product of the Durham-specific ecosystem because they really have been a child of Durham. They were working at the American Underground at the time. They got a seed grant from us in 2017. And then by 2021, they got a BEC growth grant of $75,000 and closed on a $3 million round. And they are now headquartered in Provident 1898, which is Durham's preeminent black co-working space, where we have our office. So it's kind of fun now to be bumping into grantees all the time. Do you understand a theme here to this ecosystem, how it feeds upon itself? My very closeted tree-hugging self loves this next one, Planted. Planted first became aware to us when they applied for something that has nothing to do with what they are today, which is not uncommon, by the way. We will see founders repeat apply under different things. So they got a micro grant, so we get to take credit, so to speak. I don't mean that we deserve it, though, because the founder, Hadetan, is just brilliant. He's a SpaceX engineer. And then he partnered up with Nathan Silvernail and Josh Dorfman. Josh was known to us very well because he was the executive director at Venture Asheville before Jeff Kaplan was in that role. So he was a grantee. When these folks got together, they saw an application for this technology to take it into a completely different field, which is now revolutionizing construction. For those of you familiar with building a house or a building, you put up this stuff called OSB siding. You know, it's paneled. That stuff is made from 40, 50, 60-year-old loplolly pine. It's very bad for the environment. They have figured out a way to make a better product, better paneling, using a switchgrass that's perennial, grows, sequesters carbon. Fast forward to the present. They're in Oxford, North Carolina. They have 78 employees currently. They are operating in an abandoned 80,000 square foot cigarette factory, and they're growing their proprietary grass in fields that once grew tobacco. mark my words, and I'll be happy. You can roll the tape. God, I hope I'm not making a Lindsey Graham promise here. You can roll the tape later if I'm wrong, but I think Planted is going to be one of the biggest, best stories that'll come out of North Carolina in a long time. And my last example, Pazer. And again, those that pay attention will look at that slide and go, wait a minute, I don't see anything about NCIDEA funding Pazer. We didn't. We must have been up to our quota in Charlotte companies at the time, so we missed this one. However, they were funded by Idea Fund Partners, one of the more active funds in the state. And here's a little bit of NCIDEA trivia. We are the largest LP in Fund 1, 2, and 3 of Idea Fund Partners, which means when Idea Fund Partners invested in Pazer, we invested in Pazer. And 2 weeks ago, they had an exceptional exit of $250 million. You know, so great for the region, an incredible jolt of caffeine, and, you know, not a bad little return for us, a 7-figure return, which guess what we'll do with that money? We'll put it back into the ecosystem. So when you put all that together, what does that really mean? Here's kind of our vanity metrics. So I'll start top left, 670 million with an asterisk. That's our self-reported number. We ask funded companies to do an annual survey where they give us data. After about 5 years or when the last check is written, they get a little lax with that. If you actually take our list of companies and pump it into PitchBook, PitchBook would say that number is closer to 900 million. So it's somewhere between 670 to 900 million. Unless you think, oh, okay, there was 2 or 3 outliers that did like 50 million. Not so. Over 35 companies have raised over 5 million. 28 have exited. And there's the number I really like the most, the job creation number, 4,300 jobs. Now, thank you. The reason I point to that number is because there's a few of you in the room that take umbrage when there's an announcement of the state giving an enormous financial incentive package to a large established company to move here, right? I mean, it's water off my back, but some of you all get a little upset when those announcements happen. The people who are laughing know that it really pisses me off, so. And the reason I get a little perturbed about that is because I have this bad habit. I take that number, the top line number of what the incentive package is valued at, and y'all can do this at home too. You can follow along, right? You take that number and then take whatever number of promised jobs are, and you get a cost per job. Practitioners take issue with me on that, but I don't care. I stand by it, right? We gave them X dollars of incentives on the promise of creating X jobs. There's a cost per job. We have put through seed and micro program about 10-ish million. And we take somewhat credit, or at least have paternalistic pride in that 4,300 job number because we're usually the first institutional funder. We're the first, non-friends and family. So we get them super early. We get them at that time where they say, every dollar was worth, $1,000. And if you took 10 million and divided by 4,300, 4,400, you're going to get a number less than $2,500 per job. One of our keynote speakers from last year, some of you all remember him, Greg Leroy from Good Jobs First. He went down, he brought the receipts. And it's not uncommon to have one of these deals where you do that cost per job and it's 6 figures. So I ask you, does it make sense to spend $120,000 for a job that's going to have a salary of, let's say, $75,000? The ROI on the payroll tax for that alone has to be measured in decades, not years. This is one of the most underappreciated advantages and benefits of promoting entrepreneurship. It is the silent, operating in plain sight, unappreciated job creation engine that's underpinning everything we do. And that's one of the things that gets me out of bed. So if you put all this together, and if there was, quote, a secret to our success, it would be this. It's grinding it out. It's 900 grants. It's 21 point whatever million on the street. I go sometimes to organizations and places and they say, Thom, what's the secret? And I always like to kind of, lean into the microphone and say, the secret? You want the secret? The secret is there's no secret. It is a good team, with a great board, doing the hard work, sufficiently funded, patiently supported, grinding it out, cycle after cycle after cycle. That's the secret. And oh, by the way, that's what entrepreneurs do, right? They grind it out. You measure, you change when you have to, you pivot, do less of the things that don't work so well, do more of the things that work well, and over time you get to critical mass and you get this flywheel effect. That's the secret. So we made it. We're going to keep doing what we do. We're going to fight the good fight. We're going to engage other willing bodies and partners to fight the good fight so that we can really help the promise of what we all stand here for, and that is the entrepreneurial potential of our people. And that's all people. Everybody has equal potential. We just have to give them equal opportunity. So, thank you for all that.